Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another episode of Friendly Friday, a weekly series where we take a look at budget, standard or modern decks, and this week we're taking a look at the Deeproot Energy in Standard, which is a blue-green energy deck running Deeproot Champion, which is a 2-mana 1/1 from Ixalan that reads, whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on Deeproot Champion. So you'll notice a lot of cheap non-creature spells in this deck to power up and protect our Deeproot Champion. Let's take a look at the other creatures in this deck. We've got a total of 4 copies of Greenbelt Rampager, which for a single green is a 3/4 with a strange drawback in that when the Rampager enters a battlefield, we have to pay 2 energy. If we can't pay 2 energy, we have to return the Rampager back to our hand, and then we do get 1 energy for our troubles. So sometimes you'll have to replay the Rampager a couple of times before you can keep it in play, but if you have some energy from other cards, you can just play the Rampager for a single green mana. And in the late game, sometimes you can use the Rampager to produce energy, since you can sink all your excess energy into a card like Longtusk Cub, and then you can keep replaying the Rampager over and over again, since you'll never have the 2 energy required to keep it in play. Speaking of Longtusk Cub, that's our next creature, which for 2 mana is a 2/2, that whenever the Longtusk Cub deals combat damage to a player, we get 2 energy, and we can pay 2 energy at any time to put a +1/+1 counter on Longtusk Cub. So a very powerful play on turn 2 that can keep snowballing if you can keep connecting with it and put more +1/+1 counters on it every time. And our final creature is Rogue Refiner, which is a 3 mana 3/2, and when it enters a battlefield we get to draw a card and we also get 2 energy, so nice value creature. So these 4 creatures are the core of the deck, and then the rest of the deck are cheap non-creature spells to protect our creatures and to clear a path so that they can keep attacking. We've got 2 copies of Dive Down, which is an instant that gives one of our creatures +0/+3 as well as hexproof until end of turn, so a nice way to protect our creatures from spot removal spells. We also have 4 copies of Opt, which lets us scry 1 and then draw a card, so it gives us some card selection, as well as being another cheap instant to power up our Deeproot Champion. We've got 2 copies of Unsummon, which is our pseudo removal in this deck, that returns target creature to its owner's hand, so a nice tempo play, can maybe reset opposing Longtusk Cubs and just buys us enough time so that we can keep attacking with our creatures and then hopefully kill the opponent before they get to capitalize on our card disadvantage. We've got 4 copies of Attune with Aether, which is a nice card in this deck as it provides 2 energy as well as letting us look for any basic land and put it into our hand. So this lets us cheat on our land count by only running 18 lands and 4 copies of Attune with Aether, but Attune of course has a lot of advantages as it's another cheap sorcery to power up Deeproot Champion, and of course the energy works very well with our Greenbelt Rampager and Longtusk Cub. And next up we've got 4 copies of Blossoming Defense, which is an instant to give target creature +2/+2 and hexproof until end of turn, so a better version of Dive Down, but we just wanted more copies of Blossoming Defense, which is why we also have the 2 copies of Dive Down. Then we have 2 copies of Aether Meltdown, which is an enchantment aura with flash, so we can play it at instant speed. It enchants a creature or vehicle, and when it enters a battlefield we get 2 energy, and then the enchanted permanent gets -4/-0, so this is a nice way to shrink down opposing creatures and vehicles so that we can keep attacking with our own creatures. We also have 4 copies of Cartouche of Knowledge, which is another enchantment aura, but this one we want to put on our own creatures, as the enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and flying, and when the Cartouche of Knowledge enters the battlefield we also get to draw a card, so we are not down on any card advantage. We also have 2 copies of Negate to counter target non-creature spell, so can deal with opposing planeswalkers, sweeper effects, spot removal spells, you name it. And then finally we have 2 copies of Nissa, Steward of Elements, which is an interesting planeswalker with X in the mana cost. X will be equal to the number of loyalty counters that Nissa enters a battlefield with, so we want to make sure that X is at least 1, so Nissa will cost at least 3 mana. Then she has a +2 ability that lets us scry 2. We have a 0 ability that lets us take a look at the top card of our library. If it's a land card or a creature card with converted mana cost equal or less than the loyalty counters on Nissa, we get to put it into play right away, and since all our creatures are 1, 2 or 3 mana, it's not that difficult to have it enter the battlefield right away, and of course you can set it up with the +2 that lets us scry 2, and then the -6 turns 2 of our lands into 5/5 elemental creatures with flying until end of turn, so that's a nice way to close out the game. Then taking a look at our mana base, it's pretty simple. We've got 4 islands, 6 forests, which we can all search up with Attune with Aether. Then we've got 4 copies of Botanical Sanctum, which on Magic Online is by far the most expensive card in the deck, but unfortunately it is a necessity as it makes both blue and green mana and enters the battlefield untapped. And then 4 copies of Aether Hub that adds an energy, and for an energy makes mana of any color, otherwise it makes colorless mana. Then taking a quick look at the sideboard, we've got 3 copies of Spell Pierce that comes in against the control decks, as well as 2 copies of Jace's Defeat, which is also excellent against control decks as it counters both their counter spells and their win conditions. 2 copies of Negate, also excellent against control, as well as Shaper's Sanctuary, which is also great against decks with a lot of spot removal spells. We've got 3 copies of Appetite for the Unnatural against all the enchantment-based token decks. Then 2 copies of Deathgorge Scavenger, which is okay against the mono-red deck as well as any graveyard-based deck. And 2 copies of Aethersphere Harvester, which is also excellent against the aggressive mono-red decks. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener. We're on the draw here, and this looks like a keepable hand. We've got a turn 2 champion, some non-creature spells, some rogue refiners. Let's lead with Sanctum, and we could opt, but I think we want to keep our opt until after we cast our champion. Sunscorched Desert, so it looks like we're up against mono red, which does make it unlikely that this Deeproot Champion is gonna survive very long, which might be a reason to just run out our opt right away. But I think we still want to keep it. So we'll take 2. Alright, there's a Blossoming Defense. But given that we have a turn 3 play in Rogue Refiner, I'm fine with running out a champion. And say go. If for some reason the champion doesn't get killed, then we can go pretty big here with Cartouche of Knowledge and then Blossoming Defense for protection. But I imagine the champion will bite the dust. Alright, there's an Abrade. But at least their opponent didn't progress their board. Given that they didn't have any 1-drops, they might just have more 2-drops or perhaps some Chandras or Hazarets. Negate the draw, which could counter Chandra, but we do need to get on the board with these Rogue Refiners. Longtusk Cub is an excellent draw. So next turn we could run out the Cub. Opponents attacking with their Kenra. I think we take the 2 damage here, as the Cub will be able to block the Kenra. And instead, Otepec Huntmaster. Alright, did not expect this. So their opponent might have some dinos in their deck. Raptor Hatchling, alright. So an interesting twist on the mono-red archetype. Cartouche of Knowledge to draw. So could run out another Rogue Refiner, or we can just play out the Cub and have access to Opt and Blossoming Defense. I think we run out the Cub as we want some big creature in play. And then we'll pass since we don't want to attack the Rogue Refiner into the Hatchling. There's Ancrop Crasher. So let's see if the opponent wants to exert it here to prevent the Cub from blocking. So they are exerting it on the Cub, and I think we'll Blossoming Defense in response since we want to be able to block with our Cub. And then we'll eat the Ancrop Crasher, and I'm fine trading now for the Kenra, now that we know our opponent doesn't have something like Chandra. So some good trades, and we're still at 12. Botanical Sanctum at the draw. So here we could suit up our Longtusk Cub. Opponent, if they have a shock, we can grow the Cub in response. So seems like a safe place to put some cartouches on the Cub. Other option is just playing out a Rogue Refiner, which is also fine. Maybe we do run out the Rogue Refiner as it's more mana efficient here. And then next turn we can double Cartouche. Find another Sanctum. And I think we do actually attack with our Cub here. And then pump it twice to get it out of burn range. Opponent could still have something like a Glorybringer or a Chandra to kill it. But then we can pump it once more and it'll be a 5/5. So what red dinosaurs could our opponent be playing besides Hatchling? I imagine they'll have the 3/3 Menace that deals the damage whenever a player plays a creature. Consuming Fervor. Alright. So the Hatchling now a 4/4. And Lightning Strike kills Rogue Refiner. So we will be taking some damage here. We'll take 5 down to 7. But the opponent does only have 1 card left. And Unsummon is the perfect draw here, as that takes care of the Hatchling nicely. So of course, pumping up the Enraged creature here is a nice synergy, as they get a 3/3 dino whenever the Hatchling is dealt damage. So let's go ahead and put a Cartouche on our Cub. Draw a card. Find an Aether Hub, which I think we want to play here. So if we pump the Cub, we can hit for 6. So we won't have a 2-turn clock even if we put the Cartouche on the Cub. So let's just attack for 5 here. And let's make that 6. And I think we wait with unsummoning the Hatchling. So let's unsummon that. Our opponent's got an Invigorated Rampage on their Huntmaster. I think we want to negate that, as I don't feel like taking 4 damage here. So maybe if we were more patient we could have gotten the Rampage for free, but I'm fine with this. So we're at 6, opponent can replay their Hatchling, but our Cub has flying. Alright, dive down the draw. I think we start with Opt. Find a Rampager, which we can play. Keep it in play as well. And put a Cartouche on it. Find another Opt. So let's go ahead and attack for 6. We could have pumped the Cub first and then played the Rampager second main phase so that we got in for an additional point of damage, but with the opponent at 10 that didn't really make a difference, as this is still a 2-turn clock. So our opponent does have 3 deserts, so they would eventually be able to kill us with their deserts, but luckily we had a pretty quick start ourselves. Alright, we got there. So against mono red dinos, still think we want the Harvester, even though it does die to a Braid. Deathgorge Scavenger still seems okay. Then what don't we want? I don't think we want Nissa. Negate can be a little slow perhaps, maybe we want Spell Pierces instead. That's definitely a consideration. Still think we want the Cartouche to avoid getting into a fight with the Hatchling. So I think we just take out the 2 negates. I would rather have the cheaper dive down. So let's submit it like this. And this hand looks like a keep. We can attune for an island. We've got a Cub. And then we can opt to find some more action. So let's get an island here. Turn to Hatchling. I think we want to play out the Aether Hub here in case we want to Aether Hub next turn to grow the Cub. Run out the Cub, which might die to a burn spell here, but it's going to have to be a 3 damage burn spell. And then we have this Scavenger to exile the Cub and gain some life. So there's a Lightning Strike. Hatchling only getting in for 1. I actually think we want a Rogue Refiner rather than Scavenger here, as we're gonna get to gain the 2 life at some point no matter what, but this maybe helps us find a protection spell for the Scavenger, which is more valuable in play than the Rogue Refiner. The only difference is that the Scavenger might be able to attack for 4, but still seems fine to run out the Rogue Refiner here. Finds a Rampager, which is excellent, so next turn we can Rampager plus Scavenger. Uncrop Crasher. It's probably gonna get exerted. So our opponent is getting in for 4. Alright, so I think we can start with playing out the Rampager here. Attack with a Rogue Refiner. And second main, run out the Scavenger, which is going to exile our own Cub to gain some life. Alright. Another Raptor Hatchling, which has yet to make a 3/3 Dino here. Hatchling gets in, nope. Hatchling's gonna stay on defense, but these cartouches are gonna do a nice job of giving our creature some wings. And I think we give that to the Rampager, since we don't want to run into a 3 damage burn spell killing our creature in response. Find a Blossoming Defense, excellent, so now we can pretty safely put a Cartouche on our Scavenger. I guess we should have tapped differently there, but this gives us the flexibility of Opt as well. Find an Unsummon, excellent, so let's go ahead and attack. And I think we want to only attack with our flyers, keep the Rogue Refiner on defense to force an Exert on the Crasher, and we also don't want to attack into the Hatchling, and we'll exile the Lightning Strike to get in for an additional point. Puts the opponent on a 2-turn clock. And we have Blossoming Defense and Unsummon in case something goes wrong. Alright, we got there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and this looks like a keepable hand, where we're probably gonna run out the Rampager turn 1 to get an energy, turn to Deeproot Champion, and then go from there. So let's run out Rampager. Evolving Wilds from the opponent, so it could be anything. Gets a Mountain. So Deeproot Champion might not be long for this world. We did also pick up a Longtusk Cub, which is a nice alternative to the Champion, and would let us cheat out the Rampager next turn perhaps, but I think the highest upside is just getting this Champion down and getting some counters on it as quickly as possible. And if our opponent spends a removal spell on it, that's still fine. Highland Lake tapped. And Island draw, excellent, so don't have a protection spell for the Deeproot Champion here, which means I don't think I want to run out the Cartouche yet. So instead we're probably gonna run out the Rogue Refiner. So let's just hit for 1 here. We could also run out the Cub and keep up Opt, but the difference between 1 and 2 toughness on the Deeproot Champion doesn't really change much, so might as well run out the Rogue Refiner here. Get some card advantage, find a Forest, so next turn we can deploy both the Cub and the Rampager. Desert of the Mindful. So opponent on some sort of blue-red control deck, it looks like. Find an Aether Hub. I think we start by attacking with both, and then we just deploy some more creatures. So we could cast Opt here, just to grow the champion, since we're gonna play out the Cub and the Rampager here most likely. So I don't hate that. Let's see if the opponent has a response. They don't. Find an Unsummon, which is probably not going to be great in this matchup if our opponent's not playing any creatures. Put that on the bottom, find another Deeproot Champion. But I think we're going to stick to our plan of Cub plus Rampager. And then as soon as our opponent taps out and we can safely play out a Cartouche, we'll do that. So let's go ahead and run out the Rampager. Might get Essence scattered. It does. But we did not have to spend the 2 energy there, so that's nice value. And now we get to resolve Cub, which is arguably better than the Greenbelt Rampager. Could have played a second Deeproot Champion as well. 4 mana from the opponent, and we drew an Unsummon anyways. So I think we want to deploy Aether Hub, get an additional energy. Then I think we actually deployed the Deeproot Champion, since we might end up casting this Unsummon to save on our creatures, and we want the Deeproot in play so that we get to put a counter on it. Opponent doesn't do anything, we'll go to attacks. Attack with everyone, and I don't think we want to pump the Cub here, unless we have 6 energy so that we can save it from a 3 damage burn spell. Opponent's just gonna cycle a Desert of the Mindful, maybe looking for a removal spell. Instead they're just gonna take it, so they're down to 7. And I think we're just gonna say go here. Keep up Unsummon to maybe protect the creature from removal. Opponent instead cycles another Desert. And alright, they scoop it up, so we don't quite know what our opponent is up to. So we'll sideboard as if they're on a blue-red control deck. So what does that mean? Unsummon's probably not great. Aether Meltdown is also not going to be great. Cartouche is questionable, as it does open us up to getting 2 for 1. Shaper's Sanctuary is probably going to be okay. Spell Pierces are probably going to be okay, as well as the Negates. Not sure about Jace's defeat yet, since we don't know if our opponent is playing any Gear Hulks or not, and they're not going to have access to the Scarab God. So if we want to take out all 4 Cartouches, then we do have room for 2 more. I think we do take out the Cartouches here, and then we can choose between Scavenger or Harvester. I think we'll go with the Harvester here. So now we have a bunch more counter spells to protect our creatures with, and some vehicles which are tough to deal with. This looks like a keep. And I think turn 1 we will opt opponent with Mountain. Alright, find another opt. If our opponent has something like Search for Ascanta, we can Spell Pierce that. Instead double Mountain. And end of turn we'll opt. Blossoming Defense I would usually keep, but we're kind of tied up on mana here, so I think I'll actually bottom that. Find a Rogue Refiner and an Attune. I think we'll still run out Cub here, even if it's gonna get killed. And then next turn we can Attune for Forest and run out a second Cub. Opponent did not have removal for it. Evolving Wilds is probably gonna find an island. Yep, there it is. And the Braid is gonna kill the Cub. Alright, we found a forest, so we could just run out Rogue Refiner here instead of Cub. And Rogue Refiner is pretty nice in any control matchup, as it's a nice 2 for 1. And given that we can't grow the Cub to survive a 3 damage burn spell yet, I think I'm actually okay with running out Rogue Refiner instead here. Find another Attune, so next turn we can double Attune plus Cub if we want to. But first things first, we're probably just gonna attack. So we also picked up a Deeproot Champion, which does change things slightly, as we could choose to run out the Champion before casting all of these Attunes. Spell Pierce doesn't save the Deeproot Champion from an Essence Scatter, so that doesn't do a whole lot. So I think we actually do run out the Champion. And then Attune for an island. And then run out the island, say go, keep up Spell Pierce and opt. 5 mana for the opponent. They're gonna say go. And end of turn I think I will opt. And Forest can go to the bottom. Find a Blossoming Defense. Opponent lets us untap. So now we can run out the Harvester, which also grows a Champion. And we could still keep up Spell Pierce, but I think I actually want to Attune first since we haven't made our land drop yet. Opponent lets it happen. We'll find another Forest. So we have to choose between Blossoming Defense and Spell Pierce. I think we want to keep up Blossoming Defense here. So let's run out the Harvester, which also grows a Champion. And then we'll attack for 8. Opponent could Glimmer end of turn, but they don't. So still not sure what they're up to. It's gonna be 6 mana for a Combustible Gearhulk. Alright, that's okay. I think we'll let the opponent have 3 cards here, since they might be running something crazy like Metal War Colossus, and we would just die on the spot, since I think we can fight through 3 extra cards. So we'll let the opponent have it. Untap, find an island. So we could attack with the Champion and then Blossoming Defense to kill the Gearhulk if it blocks, since the opponent's kind of forced to block anyways. So I think we start by casting Rogue Refiner, as that can crew the Harvester. Find a Botanical Sanctum. So let's crew with the Rogue Refiner. And then attack with everyone. Opponent's gonna make the obvious block. We'll Blossoming Defense here to eat the Gearhulk and get in for 6. And keep up Spell Pierce. Could have played out a Sanctum there, forgot to. 7 mana. It's gonna be difficult for them to stabilize here, as we still have Cub to crew the Harvester, which is also lethal. Depths of Desire on our Deeproot Champion. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fine. Not gonna Spell Pierce that, since they're still dead to plenty of our creatures here. And Indomitable Creativity. I see, so they're trying to do something fancy here. But unfortunately for them, we're just gonna Spell Pierce that, and we'll never find out what the opponent was gonna get. Probably just another Combustible Gearhulk. And alright, we got there. Sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play, and this hand looks like a keep. Turn 1 we can Rampager here, as we want to keep the opt for our Deeproot Champion. We could even consider just running out the Rampager here, rather than the Deeproot Champion, as that way we can Deeproot Champion plus opt in the same turn. Yeah, that's probably fine. So let's Rampager, return it to our hand, and then Rampager one last time. The reason to play the Champion there is to play around something like Essence Scatter, which they didn't have up yet, but a 3/4 survives most 3 damage removal spells, which is also a reason to run it out. So looks like we're up against Teamer Energy, which has access to Harness Lightning, which can deal a lot more than 3 damage. Although Blossoming Defense is a nice one. So let's go ahead and attack for 3. And then we can run out Deeproot Champion and keep up either Opt or Blossoming Defense. With access to 4 mana, our opponent might want to play something like a Bristling Hydra, or just one of the many 3-drops in the deck, and they might not be interested in spending a turn on a removal spell. So it might be better to run out the Champion, keep up Opt, and that way we can be more proactive and use our 1 mana here to grow the Champion, since the opponent's unlikely to spend this turn casting a removal spell. I guess they could have Chandra, but that card doesn't see a whole lot of main deck play anymore in Temur. Looks like a Rogue Refiner. Alright, so they could still have a Magma Spray, but that's about it as far as removal spells go for 1 mana. And 1 toughness or 2 toughness doesn't make a difference. Opponent is gonna attack for 2, so they no longer are representing Magma Spray, so we'll happily take 2. And then end of turn we can opt to start growing the Deeproot Champion. And another Rampager I don't think we want, since it's pretty mana intensive. Find another Deeproot Champion instead, and a third one. Kind of want to get this Cartouche of Knowledge onto our first Deeproot Champion, and then be able to protect it with Blossoming Defense. I think we start with that. And then, depending on what we draw here, we might change our plan. Alright, Nissa, so yeah, let's just get in there. So, next turn we can maybe deploy another Deeproot Champion, or perhaps just another Cartouche. And Blossoming Defense is gonna have to protect us from something like a Harness Lightning. Opponent with Spire of Industry, interesting, so they might be playing a weirder version of Temur with maybe some main deck artifacts. Besides the Thopter tokens, opponent gets in for 5. Nope, they're keeping back the Servant. So just an attack for 3. We'll take that. And another Rogue Refiner. And another Servant, so we might actually be able to just kill our opponent here. So let's see, Blossoming Defense is +3, Cartouche is +2. So we're 1 short of killing our opponent, and Attune should do it. So Attune, put a counter on the Deeproot Champion. Doesn't really matter what basic we get, might as well get an island. Run out the island, put another Cartouche on it. Could even put it on the Greenbelt Rampager, I suppose, so we had lethal multiple ways even if we didn't draw the Attune. But this is sweeter. Draw a card, and then move to combat. Attack. And then Blossoming Defense for a +3. Alright, sweet. On to sideboarding against Temur with potentially some artifacts going on. Could be a reason to consider the Appetite, but we don't quite know what the artifacts in question are. Jace's Defeat is an okay card as it counters Rogue Refiners and Whirler Virtuosos. What cards don't we like? So Unsummon is okay against Longtusk Cub. Otherwise it's not particularly great, as most Temur cards have an effect when they enter the battlefield. Aether Meltdown's pretty weak except for against Longtusk Cub. So these are cards I consider taking out. Harvester I think has its merits, so we can consider taking that in. And do we want the Jace's Defeats? Perhaps. But I don't think we do. So we're just looking to maybe shave Unsummons or Aether Meltdowns. I think I'll go 1 and 1. And I think Nissa's still worth it. And then all our protection spells should still be good against spot removal spells from Temur. So we've got a pretty mana heavy opening hand here, unfortunately, with 4 lands Attune. Double Rampager is interesting, but overall 5 lands is a bit too much for this deck. And we don't have any interaction, so I think this is a close one, but I think this is a mulligan. And this one doesn't have any lands, so I think this is a mulligan as well. And alright, we'll keep this one and keep that on top. Maybe could have kept the first one, knowing, of course, that our 6 card hand was going to be pretty bad. But I don't think 2 Greenbelt Rampagers are going to get there in this matchup, which is a lot about getting some value out of your creatures and going pretty big with cards like Longtusk Cub. Well, there's a Rampager, turn late. Guess we'll still play it here to get an extra energy. Play out the hub. And say go. So we're hoping to draw a 3rd land for Rogue Refiner, now that it can still potentially block the Cub. Opponent could have their own Rogue Refiner, but they probably would have played that main phase 1. So instead it's a Bestiary, so that's maybe one of the main deck artifacts. Alright, so we bricked, so let's just run out the Rampager here. Which does still block the Cub if our opponent doesn't have any other ways to gain energy. Alright, triple Forest. Servants, so yeah, now the Cub can be up to a 4/4. And they're gonna draw a card. So this game is gonna be difficult if we don't draw a land here. If we had energy left, we could block and then Blossoming Defense, but unfortunately we don't. Alright, Forest to draw, so can't actually run out Rogue Refiner unless we run out the Harvester first. Cub can be up to a 5/5, so we could technically block with the Rampager and then use Blossoming Defense, which might be one of our only windows to get rid of the Longtusk Cub. But I think we need to progress our board state. So actually let's start by attacking. Since we're not gonna win a grindy game against our opponent's card advantage here, so we do need to try and close out the game quickly, which is gonna be difficult when the opponent had a better start. There's a Botanical Sanctum. Into Cub plus draw card. Opponent gets in for 6, maybe 7. It's gonna be 7. Alright, Aether Hub the draw, so we can run out a Rogue Refiner here. Maybe keep up Forest, but if we draw something like Unsummon, we want to be able to cast it. So maybe we do just keep Aether Hub in hand. Gain 2 energy, find another Rogue Refiner. So let's see, are we dead if we attack with the Harvester? We would be taking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we would gain 3, so yeah, we would be dead, so we have to play defense, which is not gonna fare well here. Another Servant. Plus a card. Opponent gets in with the large Cub, which can be up to a 7/7. Double blocking is not great, as we're forced to Blossoming Defense proactively, and then any removal spell from the opponent, which they're likely to have, is gonna blow us out. but I don't think we have a choice. Opponent puts Rogue Refiner first, so right now we can let this happen. Opponent's gonna pump the Cub, which would just be a trade. They're gonna pump it once more. Sure. And then we're gonna Blossoming Defense the Rampager. And this is where they cast Harness Lightning. Oh, their own Blossoming Defense. That's unexpected. Alright, I guess that works, so both of our creatures still die. Alright, so could cast another Rogue Refiner here, but we're probably just dead. Fine, Attune. Alright, let's concede to save some time. On to sideboarding, so maybe we want to reconsider Unsummon. Would have been pretty decent there, especially after seeing Blossoming Defense. We still haven't seen any spot removal from the opponent actually, so maybe we don't need the dive downs and can just rely on Blossoming Defense instead. And maybe bring in one Appetite to deal with the opponent's artifacts. We would like to be on a play, and this looks like an excellent hand. We are forced to attune on turn 1, just to get our land so we can cast the Deeproot Champion, so we won't get a counter from this, but that's still fine. We might run out a Cub on turn 2. Get a forest, say go. So we would like to find a third land, but Opt can also help us with that. Opponent also with turn 1 Attune. They found Mountain. Alright, another Deeproot Champion. So I've got an interesting choice here with whether or not we want to run out a Champion or a Cub. I think we want to run out the Cub so we can potentially play out Champion plus Opt in the same turn. And this forces some action from the opponent as well. Either they play their own Cub or they kill ours. It looks like they have their own Cub. And we found Blossoming Defense, which is nice. So I think we attack, offer the trade. If they sink energy into their Cub, we Blossoming Defense. If they don't trade, we can just run out the Deeproot Champion. Alright, it looks like the opponent's not blocking, so we'll pump our Cub. And gain some energy. And then run out a Deeproot Champion. And now they have 2 creatures to deal with. It's gonna be Electrostatic Pummeler. Alright, so that explains a lot. So the opponent was not on Temur Energy, instead they were on Temur Pummeler. Kind of sideboarded incorrectly perhaps because of that. Opponent's just gonna sink everything into their Longtusk Cub, which is now a 5/5, so they're not actually planning to do a lot of damage with the Pummeler. So we're down to 15. Negate the draw, which can stop a pump spell, but I think we need to make sure we keep hitting our land drops here. So I think we need to Opt. Main phase, looking for lands. Aether Hub will stay on top. Run out Aether Hub. And then I think we attack with both. And then the question is, do we run out another Deeproot Champion? Do we keep up Negate or Blossoming Defense? I think we want to run out the other Champion. So our opponent's not gonna block, we're gonna pump our Cub. Opponent's at 11, run out another Champion. Say go. Then we can just use these Rogue Refiners as chum blockers for the opponent's Cub. Servant. That's fine. Opponent gets in with both. Could even consider blocking the Pummeler, forcing them to use either a pump spell or 3 energy on their Pummeler. So I actually think we do want to block the Pummeler, and we're fine if they save it or if they just let the trade happen. Looks like they're just fine with the trade. So we just have to deal with a 7/7 Cub. Opponent passes. There's Unsummon. Perfect, so that can take care of the opponent's Cub. I think we Unsummon right now. Opponent can Blossoming Defense, we can Negate. They don't have any energy, so they can't double Blossoming Defense us. And I would rather have them use the Blossoming Defense in our turn so they don't get the +2/+2 benefit anyways. So let's Unsummon the Cub. Let's see if they have the defense. They don't, and they concede. Alright, sweet. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for supporting the channel, and you can do so yourself as well over at patreon.com/LegenVD, where you get cool rewards for supporting the channel, as well as getting us closer to our goals, where with every goal reached, we will release an additional weekly series. So if you want to see more content, Patreon is the place to go.